I wasn't looking to be anyone's savior that day. Hell, I wasn't even looking for trouble. All I wanted was some damn quiet. It started like any other Thursday: hot coffee, cold wind, and a stack of bills that made my mailbox feel like a bad joke. I'd just been laid off from my warehouse gig 2 weeks back, and my apartment lease was hanging on by the thread of a wheel. Unemployed, underwhelmed, and one sandwich short of giving up, I walked the same route I always did. Only this time, I kicked something halfway buried in a storm drain. It was a letter. Yellowed. Weather-bitten. Addressed in cursive so careful it looked like it belonged in a museum. No stamp. Just an address about a mile away and a name, Mr. Harlan G. Whitmore. I should have tossed it. Probably belonged to someone dead or dodging the census. But something about it stuck with me, the way the paper felt warm, even in the wind. Like it was waiting. I walked to the address. Big brick house, way out of place in a neighborhood mostly made of broken porches and rusted mailboxes. The kind of place you assume has stories behind the curtains. The kind of place that probably has 100 cameras and 0 patience for drop-ins. I stood at the gate like an idiot, letter in hand. Then the door creaked open. Not a butler. Not a maid. Not some automated voice barking at me through a speaker. Just a man, old, pale, standing with a silver cane and a look in his eyes like he'd already buried a lifetime. "You lost?" he asked, voice sharp as a whip. "No, sir," I said, holding up the envelope like it was evidence. "Found this. Figured it might be yours." He stared at it. Then at me. "You walked it here?" I nodded. "Didn't have much else to do today." He chuckled. Not kindly, more like he didn't believe me. But then, without another word, he opened the gate. "I don't usually let people in," he muttered. "But curiosity's a cruel companion." Inside was not what I expected. No velvet furniture. No dust-covered chandeliers. Just wood. Clean lines. Quiet. There was warmth, sure, but not the cozy kind. More like a faded photograph, beautiful but aching. "Sit," he said, gesturing to a leather chair by the fireplace. "Let's see what fate blew back my way." He opened the letter with fingers that trembled slightly, age or emotion, I wasn't sure. As he read, his face changed. Not shocked, not sad. Just soft. Like someone remembering a name they hadn't dared say in decades. "This letter," he said slowly, "was written to me 30 years ago. I lost it before I could ever read it." I blinked. "You're saying this has been floating around for 30 years? He didn't answer. Just folded the letter and slipped it into his coat like it was treasure. Then he looked at me, really looked. "What's your name, son?" "Eli. Eli Mercer." "Humph." He leaned on his cane, walked a slow circle around the room, then stopped. "Ever heard of Whitmore Holdings?" I laughed. "Only if that's the same Whitmore that owns half the state." "That's the one," he said, eyes glinting. It hit me then, this wasn't some random old man. This was that Whitmore. And I was sitting in his house, delivering a 30-year-old letter. "What are the odds?" I said under my breath. He smiled, just a little. "That's the thing about odds, Eli. You only notice them when they're broken." I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded. Awkward. Trying not to fidget. I was about to make an excuse and leave when he said something that stopped me cold. "You know what kindness looks like to a man who hasn't seen it in 50 years? I shook my head. "Exactly like what you just did." He motioned toward the fireplace. "Stay a while. You've already changed the course of something." I didn't understand what he meant. Not yet. But I stayed. And that's when everything began to shift. I stayed because I was curious. That's all. I didn't expect anything. Not a sandwich. Not a handshake. Definitely not what happened next. "Mr. Whitmore," he insisted I call him Harlan after the second time I tripped over, "sir, wasn't just rich. He was loaded in the way that makes banks nervous. But you wouldn't know it from the inside of his house. No gold statues. No champagne fountains. Just books. Stacks of them. Some lined up neat as soldiers, others flopped open on side tables like they'd fallen asleep mid-sentence. "Sit," he said again, and I did, even though the leather crackled like it hadn't been used since Reagan. He asked me questions. Strange ones. "If a man cheats you out of $20 and offers you 1,000 to forget it, do you take the 1,000 or punch him in the mouth?" "I'd probably take the 1,000 and still punch him." He laughed, actually laughed. "Not bad." "Then, if you found a wallet with no ID but $5,000 in cash, what would you do?" I hesitated. "Turn it in. Hope karma's real." Humph. He didn't say if it was the right answer. Just nodded like he'd filed it away under interesting data. It went on like that for a while, these little moral riddles wrapped in casual talk. Meanwhile, the fire popped, the clock ticked, and the sun dipped behind velvet curtains so thick they might have blocked out time itself. I should have left. Should have said thanks and slipped back into the world where couches had springs poking through and dinner was a maybe. But something about Harlan kept me rooted. He poured 2 glasses of bourbon, real stuff, from a decanter with a gold crest and handed me one without asking if I drank. To fate, he said. I clinked my glass against his. To weird afternoons. He smiled again. That same half-smirk that said he knew something I didn't. You're wondering why I'm talking to you, he said. Kinda, yeah. You brought me a ghost. He tapped the letter in his coat pocket. You gave me something I thought I'd never get back. That's worth more than gold in my world. I didn't know what to say to that. Felt like I'd wandered into a movie where I didn't know my lines. You work? He asked. Used to. Warehouse. Got laid off last month. Got a place to stay? I stared into the fire. Not really. He nodded slowly like that confirmed something he'd already guessed. Ever thought about starting over? I looked at him. Who hasn't? He reached into a drawer and pulled out a folder. Thick. Bound in leather. He slid it across the table like it was a board game and I'd just been invited to play. Open it. Inside were documents. Real ones. Legal papers with his name and mine written across the top in neat print. My name. My damn name. This is a joke, I said, half laughing, half panicking. Dead serious, he replied. That letter changed something. You reminded me that not all goodness is gone from the world. I've been looking for someone to pass this on to. This. My company. My estate. My legacy. I stared at him like he'd just told me I'd won the moon. But why me? I asked, heart-thumping. Because everyone else wants it for the wrong reasons, he said. And you didn't even ask. I laughed. I had to. It was either that or fall apart. This is insane. Maybe, he said, sipping his drink. Or maybe it's exactly what the universe owed me and what it's offering you. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. Harlan let me crash in one of the guest rooms, The sheets smelled like cedar and old wealth. I lay there staring at the ceiling, trying to figure out if any of it was real. By morning, I still didn't believe it. But the papers were still on the table. The letter still folded in Harlan's coat. And the man who should have been impossible was sitting across from me at breakfast, eating eggs like nothing had changed. You hungry? He asked. I nodded. Good. You're gonna need your strength. And that's when he told me. There was one condition. It wasn't the kind of condition you hear about in stories where the rich old guy hands over his fortune. No secret will. No treasure map. No long-lost family drama, at least not yet. It was simpler. Which made it worse. I need you to spend a week shadowing me, Harlan said, cutting into a grapefruit with surgical precision. Sunrise to sundown. You go where I go. Hear what I hear. See what this life really costs. I blinked, coffee halfway to my lips. You mean, like, an internship? He looked at me over his glasses. More like an audit. I almost said no. I'm not proud of it, but I've never been great at sticking around when things get heavy. But something about the way he said it, like he was testing something deeper than loyalty, made me stay. So, I followed him. Day 1, we drove to a boardroom downtown. The kind with glass walls and views of a skyline I'd only seen from the bus. Men in tailored suits gave me side eyes like I was a lost intern. Harlan didn't introduce me. Just let me sit beside him, silent, taking notes on a legal pad I didn't know what to do with. He shredded them. Not the men, their arguments. One by one, calm as a monk, brutal as a wolf. He dismantled their plans, rebuilt better ones, then lit a cigar like he'd just performed surgery on the future. I asked him, do you ever feel bad for making people feel small? He didn't blink. Power isn't cruelty, Eli. It's gravity. It pulls weak things down, lifts strong things up. I use it, but I never forget it's borrowed. That night, we visited a hospital he funded. The pediatric wing bore his name. Kids waved. Nurses smiled like he was Santa in a 3-piece suit. I watched his whole face change, less marble statue, more grandfather in a fairy tale. He knelt to tie a boy's sneaker. Whispered something in a girl's ear that made her giggle like sunshine. Then we got back in the car and his silence came back hard. Why the change? I asked. Because I need both sides, he said. The hammer and the hand that holds. By day 4, I knew his schedule better than I knew my own heartbeat. Morning meetings. Lunchtime calls. Afternoons filled with charity boards, negotiations, and endless cups of coffee that tasted like success and bitterness in equal measure. But something was wrong. I started noticing things. The way he winced sometimes when he stood. How his fingers trembled before he signed something. The small, orange pill bottles half hidden behind antique whiskey in his office drawer. I said nothing. But I started keeping count. On day 6, I woke up to find him in the library, staring at a portrait of a woman in a green dress. She was my wife, he said before I could ask. She believed in people. Even me. What happened? Cancer. 8 years ago. I haven't believed in much since. I didn't say anything. Just stood beside him in that heavy silence that only grief can carve. Then, almost casually, he asked, still think this is just about a letter? I looked at him. Really looked. I think it's about a man who wants to leave something behind that matters. He smiled, slow and sad. That's the first right answer you've given me all week. Later that night, he handed me an envelope. Open it tomorrow. After I'm gone. I stiffened. Gone where? He didn't answer. Just sipped his drink, eyes on the fire like it might burn the truth into ash. That was the last time I saw him alive. He was gone. I found him the next morning, still in his chair by the fireplace. Blanket pulled over his knees, one hand resting on the armrest like he'd just dozed off mid-thought. The fire had burned low, a bed of dying embers casting long shadows over his face. There was no drama to it. No gasp, no note, no cliché last breath. Just stillness. He left exactly the way he lived, on his own terms. I stood there for a long time just staring. My heart wasn't broken yet, but something inside me cracked wide open. The kind of crack that lets cold air in. And old ghosts. I remembered the envelope. It was still in my jacket, sealed in wax with his initials pressed deep into the red like blood. I waited hours to open it. I sat in the same chair he'd died in. I poured a drink I didn't want. Watched the sun rise higher than it should have without him. When I finally cracked the seal, I didn't expect what I found. It wasn't instructions. No final confession. No treasure map. Just a sentence. You've already passed the test, Eli. Don't let them convince you otherwise. I didn't know who they were. Until they showed up. Lawyers. 3 of them. Slick suits, smiles like snakes. They arrived 2 days after the obituary ran, didn't even knock. Just walked into Harlan's home like they owned grief. I was still in sweatpants, drinking bad coffee from a chipped mug when they handed me papers. One of them, Reynolds, the alpha, cleared his throat. Per Mr. Whitmore's final testament, you're to assume full interim control of his estate. I blinked. You mean it's real? He nodded. However. Always a however. There's a legal dispute. His nephew, Gregory Whitmore, has filed a contestation. Claims undue influence. Exploitation of an elderly man. He's petitioning for emergency conservatorship. Emergency. I laughed, though nothing felt funny. He's already dead. Reynolds didn't flinch. The courts move fast when billions are on the line. And just like that, the wolves showed their teeth. Gregory arrived a day later in a black Maserati and mirrored sunglasses, like a caricature of every rich villain who ever ruined Christmas. Mid-40s, slick hair, jawline sharp enough to cut through fake empathy. Eli Mercer, he said, oozing charm. The Good Samaritan. I didn't shake his hand. You must be the family Harlan never mentioned. He smiled wider. Oh, he mentioned me. Just not fondly. He strolled through the house like he was casing it, pointing at art he called garbage, running his hand across marble like he was already measuring it for demolition. I get it, he said, finally turning to me. You think this is a fairy tale. Poor kid stumbles into a rich man's world, gets rewarded for having a moral compass. I didn't answer. But here's the truth, he said, stepping closer. That moral compass? It's not worth a damn when you're up against people who know how to bend it. And then, with a wink, you're not gonna win. By week's end, my name was on headlines I didn't want. Drifter named sole heir to Whitmore Empire. Who is Eli Mercer? From jobless to jet set? They tore me apart. Old mugshots, just a fight I broke up at a bar, splashed across gossip blogs. A cousin I hadn't talked to in 10 years claimed I stole her car. My apartment manager told the press I skipped rent once. All of it true and none of it the story. Emily, the lawyer Harlan trusted most, called me from her car, voice tight with stress. We're in for a war, Eli. This is going to get ugly. You sure you're ready? I stared at the portrait of Harlan above the fireplace. That smirk. That knowing stare. I'm not sure of anything, I said. But I'm not walking away. Because the thing about inheriting a kingdom? You better be ready to fight to keep it. The first real hit came 2 days into the lawsuit. Gregory filed a court motion claiming Harlan was diagnosed with early-onset dementia, a lie, but a damn strategic one. His lawyers paraded around evidence, a doctored email, a witness who used to water the garden, some shady psych evaluation from a doctor who hadn't seen Harlan since 2011. Emily and I fought back hard, but the court didn't care about sentiment. It cared about paperwork. And Gregory had a whole machine behind him, grinding facts into whatever shape he needed. By the end of that week, the judge ruled a temporary freeze on all assets, bank accounts, properties, the company. Everything. It felt like someone had yanked the floor out from under me mid-step. That night, I sat in Harlan's library, surrounded by silence that felt more like a scream. All those books, all that knowledge, and I still didn't know what the hell I was doing. Then Emily burst through the front door. Found something, she said, breathless. She had a USB drive in her hand, silver, scratched, wrapped in an old rubber band. Where'd that come from? I asked. His safe. Hidden behind the bookshelf near the globe. Harlan. That sneaky bastard. We plugged it into her laptop and what we found hit like a freight train. Emails. Hundreds of them. Between Harlan and a journalist, somebody named Claire Jennings. The subject lines read like headlines never printed. Gregory's shell companies laundering through offshore charities. Illegal land acquisitions under Whitmore Global. Court bribery scandal tied to cousin's firm. I knew he was a snake, Emily muttered, scrolling fast. But this is pure rot. And then we found the kicker, a video file. Harlan, sitting at his desk, same suit I saw him wear on the last day, eyes burning through the screen. If you're watching this, Eli, then I'm gone, he said. And Gregory's crawling out of his hole like I always knew he would. He leaned in serious. I picked you because you didn't ask for anything. And that means when you do speak, people might just listen. I've left you the ammo. Now use it. The screen faded. Emily stared at me. This could burn it all down, she said. But it also makes us a target, I replied. If this gets out, we won't be fighting in court anymore, we'll be fighting to stay alive. She nodded slowly. Then we play it smart. We leak it. Piece by piece. I spent the next 24 hours writing the release plan. Coordinated emails. Fake names. Backup copies sent to trusted contacts in 5 different cities. And then we pulled the trigger. The story dropped at 9:03 a.m. on a Tuesday. By 9:30, Gregory's lawyers filed an emergency injunction. By noon, the New York Times called my phone. By sundown, Whitmore Holdings stock had plummeted 17%. Gregory went on camera denying everything with the smugness of a man who's never been told no. But the video was already viral. Harlan's words played over and over on cable news and social feeds. If you're watching this, Eli. That night, I didn't sleep. Neither did Emily. We sat on the library floor, surrounded by empty coffee cups and adrenaline. You're in this now, she said, voice low. I've been in it since the letter, I replied. Now I'm just finally standing upright. She smiled, tired but proud. You're not the same guy who walked up that driveway. Yeah, I said. And the old me? He wouldn't have made it this far. But even as we sat there, the house quiet again, I could feel it in my bones. The war wasn't over. Gregory wasn't done. And whatever came next, it would hit a lot harder. The headlines didn't stop. They bred like rabbits. Whitmore whistleblower emerges. Family fortune built on fraud? Heir or hustler, who is Eli Mercer? I couldn't walk past a TV without seeing my own face distorted under some grainy photo filter next to Gregory's grinning mug. They painted me as everything, hero, conman, pawn. Sometimes all three. But the worst part? The pressure wasn't just coming from the outside. It was inside now. That's how power works. It doesn't knock. It slithers under the door. Emily kept things steady, but I saw the tension in her shoulders. The lines forming beneath her eyes from too many nights staring at legal briefs and surveillance reports. Yeah, surveillance. Gregory had eyes on us. I caught them first. Black sedan parked outside 3 nights in a row. A guy in the bookstore down the block pretending to read Atlas Shrugged for 2 hours without flipping a page. Amateurs but bold. I confronted one of them. Stepped right up to the car, tapped on the glass with my knuckle like I was ordering coffee. You lost? I asked. The guy didn't answer. Just started the engine, drove off slow like he wanted me to know I wasn't imagining it. Later that night, Emily found a bug in the library wedged between 2 books on ethics which felt a little poetic in a messed up way. This is escalation, she said, placing the bug in a baggie. He's running out of legal moves. Which means he's about to start making illegal ones. She nodded. We need to be ready. And then, because the universe has a twisted sense of timing, we got a knock on the door. Not a goon. Not the press. A woman. Older. Sharp eyes. Red coat. Walked like she owned the earth beneath her shoes. May I speak to Eli Mercer? She asked. That's me, I said cautiously. She held out a card. Embossed. Heavy. Read, Dr. Evelyn Whitmore Fletcher. Gregory's mother. Harlan's sister, she clarified, stepping into the foyer like she'd been there yesterday. He never mentioned me, I know. We had differences. Let me guess, I said. He had a soul. You didn't. To her credit, she didn't flinch. Just smiled tightly. He had ideals. I had results. Emily hovered near the stairs, watching like a hawk. Dr. Whitmore sat in the parlor, crossed her legs like she was hosting a tea party in a war zone. I'm not here to fight, she said. Not directly. I waited. I believe Gregory's unfit. Always have. But I also believe Harlan made a mistake. My fists clenched. Choosing me. She sipped her tea, unbothered. Choosing anyone. Emotion clouds judgment. And my brother was always drowning in sentiment. You're here to what? Talk me into giving it up. No, she said. I'm here to offer you a different kind of truth. She slid an envelope across the table. Not sealed. Just folded, yellowing at the edges. From Harlan. dated 15 years ago. I opened it. One page. A name I'd never seen before. A birth certificate. And the father listed? Harlan G. Whitmore. I stared at her. My chest felt like it caved in, slow and sick. You're lying, I said. No, she replied. He didn't know until late. A brief relationship in college. The mother never told him. But once he found out, well, you can guess. You're saying I'm his son? Biologically, yes. Legally? Not unless you push for it. Emily stepped forward, voice sharp. Why show us this now? Because Gregory's burning the house down. And Harlan, despite everything, wanted it to go to someone who'd build something better. She stood, coat flaring behind her. So here's your choice, Eli? Be the drifter who stumbled into a fortune or be the heir who takes it back with blood and truth. Then she left. No theatrics. Just silence. I sat there for a long time. Couldn't breathe. Couldn't blink. Emily touched my hand. What do you want to do? I don't know, I said honestly. But I did know one thing. If this was real. Everything just changed. Truth hits differently when it's in your blood. The next morning I drove out to the cemetery. Harlan's grave was simple. Just his name, birth and death etched into stone, like it didn't matter that he'd changed the world for a dozen people and burned it down for 100 more. I stood there for a long time. I get it now, I said quietly. You didn't just want to give someone your money. You wanted to give someone your fight. Then I walked away, back to the war he left me. Emily and I spent the next 48 hours preparing for the hearing, the one that would decide whether the court upheld Harlan's will or handed everything to Gregory on a silver, blood-smeared platter. But this time, we had something Gregory didn't. The truth. Birth records. Correspondence. Even a DNA match quietly confirmed through a lab Harlan had already prepaid, years ago, like he knew this moment would come. The courtroom was packed. Media outside. Suits inside. Gregory showed up with a whole battalion of lawyers in tow. Armani suits. Gold watches. All flash, no substance. Me? I wore the same coat I'd found the letter in. Emily sat beside me, calm as a loaded gun. The judge, an older woman with ice in her eyes, cut through the opening statements fast. Gregory's team argued undue influence, manipulation, emotional instability. Emily didn't flinch. Then she stood and calmly presented the new evidence. The DNA test. The timeline. The recorded video from Harlan. The journalist's files. The real estate fraud. The tax shelters. The lies. And finally, a quiet statement Harlan had written in his own hand, tucked into that same file we found in the safe. My legacy belongs to someone who lived without power but still chose integrity. His name is Eli Mercer. He is not a replacement. He is my choice. The room went silent. Gregory paled. For the first time in weeks, I saw fear crack through his perfect smile. The judge recessed for 2 hours. I spent most of it in the hallway pacing, heart a hammer in my ribs. Then the gavel fell. She ruled in our favor. The will stood. The estate was mine. Gregory's challenge was dismissed. His reputation? Already bleeding out in the press. His assets were being audited. His lawyers were backing away like rats off a sinking ship. It should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt like gravity. I wasn't the same guy who had nothing but $1 and a rusted-out Corolla. I was now the sole heir to one of the most powerful empires in the country. And all I could think was, now what? The next few weeks blurred: press interviews, crisis management, strategy meetings, new faces trying to get close and old ones coming out of the woodwork. But I didn't forget what Harlan told me. Don't let them convince you otherwise. I sold off the real estate Greg hoarded, poured it into scholarships, food banks, a mental health clinic in the neighborhood where my mother used to pray someone would listen. I put Harlan's name on none of it. I didn't want this to be about redemption. I wanted it to be about repair. Emily stayed by my side the whole time. And somewhere between coffee-fueled nights and courtroom chaos, I realized I'd stopped calling her Harlan's lawyer. She was just Emily. One night, we stood on the balcony of the Whitmore Tower looking out at the city he built. You think he'd be proud of you? She asked. I took a breath. No. She looked at me. I think he'd be relieved. She smiled. That real one. The one that curled just a little at the corners. The one I was fighting not to fall in love with. I think you're right, she whispered. We didn't kiss. Not that night. Some endings aren't about fireworks. They're about finding silence that doesn't scare you anymore. 3 months later, I stood in the same bookstore I'd walked into when I had nothing. The woman who sold me the book? Still there. Same glasses. Same knowing smile. You look different, she said. I handed her a box. Inside? 20 copies of that same old book, 10 cents to change your life. You ever think about expanding? I asked. She raised an eyebrow. Franchise? I grinned. More like foundation. That bookstore became the first of many. Free books, free Wi-Fi, warm couches. No one turned away. We called it the Letter Project. And every single store had one framed page behind the counter. The same page, torn, yellowed, from a letter found in a gutter one cold afternoon. It read, "You reminded me what kindness looks like." And underneath, Harlan G. Whitmore,